All right, Ben Kennedy, thank you. And Joel Rosenberg is a best-selling author, Middle East expert, and editor-in-chief of All Israel News. Joel, it is good to have you in studio. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Great to be with you guys on Faith Nation.
So, Joel, you were there at the White House for the signing today. Talk about what that experience was like and just the historic nature of what happened today.
Well, I have to tell you, Jenna, that 2 years ago, as you guys know, I led the first ever evangelical delegation to the United Arab Emirates at the invitation of the Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Zayed. And I said to him, look, as evangelicals, we take the Bible very seriously, and we have been praying for the peace of Jerusalem. And it's been well over 2 decades since the last Arab country made peace. That was Jordan in 1994. We are looking, who is going to be the next Arab leader to make peace? And he leaned forward and said, Joel, I'm ready. We were stunned. I don't like to say blown away because it's the Middle East, but we were stunned. And we pressed him for the next 2 hours. We talked about it. But that was off the record at the time. But I got to tell you, it was an emotional day for me to be on the South Lawn, having known that was going to happen, but to be an Israeli, to be Jewish, to be an evangelical, and to be there watching it unfold. This is prophetic, it's historic, it's exciting, and it's personal for me. I've had 2 sons serve in the Israeli military, and I want them to have peace.
Joel, an emotional and historic day for sure. Each of the leaders expressly thanked President Trump. It was interesting to hear the leaders of UAE and Bahrain thank Trump personally. Why do you think he was able to pull off what has eluded so many of his presidential predecessors?
Well, we just came directly to this interview from a half-an-hour meeting with the Vice President, myself and David Brody. And I got to tell you, off camera, but I asked him that question. Like, why, we say in Judaism on Passover, why is this night different from all other nights? How come this president and vice president got it done? And he said that, look, the first thing he did was he threw out the Obama-Biden playbook, which was to give all kinds of deferential treatment to the Palestinians. President Trump said, no, we're not playing that game anymore. If the Palestinians want to make peace, wonderful. I'm there for them. But we're turning our attention to the Gulf states who are showing us they want a strong relationship with the United States, and they want peace with Israel. Remember, the first trip that President Trump took was not to Israel. That was the second trip. The first trip was to Saudi Arabia, where President Trump met with 50 Arab and Muslim leaders. Right. That set into motion what we saw today.
Yeah. Joel, in January, the White House unveiled a pretty different plan for peace between the Palestinians and Israel called the Peace to Prosperity. Where does this leave the Palestinians?
Well, it's very, very sad to me to see the Palestinian leadership, not the people so much, but the leadership, Mahmoud Abbas and the leadership in Ramallah. They are saying this is a stab in the back, it's a betrayal. It isn't. What President Trump and the Arab leaders, including the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain and the Saudis, have offered is $50 billion in investment in a Palestinian private economy, 1 million new jobs, bringing the Palestinian unemployment rate down so that the Palestinians can have a life for themselves and a future and a hope. And the Palestinians have said no, the leaders. This is very painful to watch. But basically what President Trump and Vice President Biden have decided is when the Palestinians are ready, wonderful. In the meantime, we're going to work with every other country in the region that wants peace, and we're going to help them get to yes, right? And so many critics have said, oh, the president, he doesn't know what he's doing. Jared Kushner, he doesn't know what he's doing. Well, they've got the first 2 Arab-Israeli peace deals in more than a quarter of a century. It's pretty impressive.
Joel, this is a huge accomplishment for Prime Minister Netanyahu. How does this translate, though, in Israel, which is shutting down due to another coronavirus spike on Friday, and where he's also still fending off corruption charges?
Well, I'm not usually using terms from English literature to describe the Prime Minister of Israel, but this is the best of times and the worst of times, okay? This is the biggest moment in the Prime Minister's diplomatic and political career. He has just delivered the first 2 Arab-Israeli peace treaties ever, and this is going to be a warm peace. We're talking about personal cooperation, people-to-people contact, investment, trade, tourism. But back home, my home, in Israel, we're going into a lockdown on Rosh Hashanah, which is our high holiday beginning on Friday. Prime Minister Netanyahu unfortunately, has let the COVID situation get out of control, and he and his team need to get focused and get this thing back in the bottle, this genie, because right now, the Prime Minister gets high marks for making peace, but people are angry at him for letting COVID get out of control.
Yeah. Joel, just a few seconds left here, but we want to hear about your projects to help bring news to the Arab world. What can you tell us?
Yeah, news about Israel and the Arab world. We've launched 2 new websites, All Israel News, which you can find at allisrael.com, and All Arab News, which is at allarab.news. Why? We're bringing exclusive coverage, exclusive interviews, including my interview with the Vice President, and we'll be linking to David Brody's interview, which is even longer and better, with the Vice President. I've been interviewing Israeli leaders, Arab leaders. Why? Because we will also be doing links to other good stories in the area, but there's so much bias against Israel, against Jews, against evangelicals, against Muslims in the Middle East. And we felt it was time to sort of make one-stop shopping, All Israel News, and I hope it's something that all of your viewers will find interesting. And of course, we'll be linking to lots of CBN stories because you guys are doing an amazing job, you all and Chris Mitchell in Jerusalem, providing coverage that not every network and news service is providing.
All right. Well, Joel Rosenberg, we look forward to that. And thank you so much for coming in today. We appreciate having you here.
Great to be on Faith Nation again.